I was watching the parade there, and I realized that some of the greatest joys and the greatest happinesses of my life have been buying and selling my homes with my realtor as my guide, my wise guide through all of it. So it's a huge privilege to be invited to come and speak with you all. I hope you know just how powerful you are as a guide as you walk the rest of us through some of these incredible highs in our life. So thank you, just from me to you. Thank you for all that you do. It's massive. Thank you. And boy, what an interesting time to be invited here, right? I mean, the old curse says, may you live in interesting times. We sure know what that means. And there's clues of it sort of everywhere. There's obviously clues in your profession. There's clues, the election this week, that was interesting. You've got other signs, though, too. There's signs of anxiety. I think we'd all have to be truthful about that. There's signs of stress. There's a lot of Adderall being prescribed and a lot of Xanax to take the edge off the Adderall with our kids. There's a lot. But it's fun. I mean, I'm a researcher by training, so I look at some other pieces of data, too, to explain that we live in a really, it's an interesting time. About 30 years ago, I started asking, I joined the Gallup organization when I was 6. I started, that's a joke, sorry, there's something called English humor. Some of you may not be familiar with English humor. Some of you may think that's a contradiction in terms, English humor. Bit like English cuisine, but it does. See, that's another joke right there. Anyway, when I started with Gallup, we started asking about trust. How much do you trust? And we listed all the various institutions in the society at large, the military, the police, the government, big tech, big healthcare, our real estate agents, healthcare, education. And it varies over the course of the years, trust, and it varies, of course, by profession, by industry, by organization. But 2024 was the first year there wasn't a single one of the institutions, organizations I've just mentioned that was north of 15%. North of 15%. So fully 85% of us can't say that we strongly trust some of these major institutions that are like the commanding heights of our economy, our society. Why is that, do you think? Now, there's a lot of different reasons, perhaps, why we might have this kind of erosion of trust. Different countries, different companies, different regions might have different explanations, but one of them, for sure, is that we fail to take really seriously the most powerful force in business. We fail to take seriously the most powerful force in business. So my hope today is to use some data to reveal to you what that most powerful force is, and then help you know what you might be able to do to design it into your own life, and design it into the people that you lead and the people that you serve. That's my hope. Because yes, it's a curse, I suppose, to live in interesting times, but it can also be a blessing. If you can really figure out what you can do to design this incredibly powerful force into your own life, it's an opportunity for you to stand out. Because most of us don't know about this force and don't take it seriously. So that's my goal for this morning. How can you figure out how to design this force into your life so that in these interesting times you can really stand out? Is that okay? Okay, super. I am a researcher, so I've spent all my time sort of doing psychometric work, is what that is. I'm studying things about you that are really important, but that I can't count. I can count your sales volume. I can count how many accidents on the job were had. I can count. But what about your talents? What about your strengths? How do you measure those? I built something called Strength Finder that some of you may have taken. Cool, right? Yeah, like how do you measure you, the human of you? Employee engagement, what's that? How do we measure it? Is it going up? Is it going down? Customer or client engagement, what's that? How does that go up and down? That's what I spent most of my time doing, and always with like a strengths lens. So I spent most of my time studying this. Top performing sales, well-being, advocacy, innovation. I was always skewed to the right, in the belief that sort of excellence isn't just the opposite of failure, which sounds sort of obvious. Of course, excellence isn't the opposite, but we live in a world actually where there's quite a lot of us believe that good is just the opposite of bad, and if you want good, you should study bad and invert it. You should study good, and then if you really figure out what's going on with the bad, you should then say, well, don't do that. And the problem is if you do that, if you look at all the bad and say, don't do that, you get not bad, which is different than good or great or excellent. Take marriage as an example. Most marriage therapy is based on the idea that a good marriage is the opposite of a bad marriage, and if you want a really good marriage, you study the really rotten ones and then say, well, don't do that. And when you study, although every marriage is unhappy in its own way, when you see, there was another, if ever I use English humor again, the hand will go up like this. So if ever they go something, I was trying to be funny. Although every unhappy marriage is unhappy in its own way, when you study the really unhappy marriages, it does actually turn out they all have one thing in common. You didn't know you're going to learn this today? You study all the really unhappy relationships, it turns out they have one thing in common. In all the really unhappy marriages, people argue a lot. I was shocked too, but it's true. No, the data is unequivocal. It's there. So, following the logic, just stick with me for a minute, following the logic that good is just the opposite of bad, if you want a really good marriage, you would say, well, don't argue. But actually, you study the really happy marriages, and you count the arguments. They put pages, this is true, they put pages on all the couples, and the moment they were arguing, they would have to beep the researcher and say, I'm arguing now, which of course helped the argument immeasurably. But they counted the arguments. It turns out there is no statistically significant difference between the number of arguments in a really great marriage and the number of arguments in a rotten one. Turns out the difference between a great relationship and a rotten one isn't the number of fights, it's what goes on in the space between them. And in the really, really, really brilliant relationships, each argument is an opportunity somehow to reach toward one another for greater curiosity, for greater intimacy, for greater connection. The fight itself, the argument itself, sort of fosters inquisitiveness about each other. And somehow in the rotten marriages, the fight is a confirmation almost of distance. And so you lean back and back and back until one day you wake up and you're physically and psychologically separated from one another. So whatever the difference is between a really great marriage and a rotten one, it's what goes on in the space between the arguments. And my point here, I suppose, is you learn nothing about that from studying the rotten marriages. I'm not saying you shouldn't study failure. You absolutely study, just you're going to learn a lot about failure and not that much about excellence. Excellence is different. So you want to build your business toward excellence, keep studying what really works, not to make yourself feel happier, but because it's different, it's got its own configuration. Which, if I gave you a visual of this, like what have I been studying? This is you can see this. This is a large retailer here in the US. You'd know exactly who they are. They've got about 8,000 stores. Each dot is a store. It's about 100 people that work in each of those dots. You'd all know exactly who this company is, and I'm not going to tell you who it is, but you'd all know. And the theory of the company, it's not rocket science, is the greater the economic potential of the neighborhood where we put the store, the more money the store makes. You got profit up the Y. You got local economic potential on the X. And although there's range, the theory, that red line, for those of you that missed the day in statistics class, that's called the line of best fit. So in general, the theory holds true. The more affluent the community, the more money the store makes. Remember, this is one company. Supposedly the same company with the same sort of policies and programs and training and development. But there's variation. I would always study this one up here. I'm not saying you shouldn't study the ones over there on the left, but my work was always spent going, what the heck is going on up there? What's going on in the same company? Why do we get such range in performance? Those of you that run teams, or run teams of teams, some of you do, you'll see this too, right? You'll get range. So my focus was always, what the heck is going on up there, top right? And when you study that, the first most obvious sign of what happens up there is if you change the x-axis to just customer or client employee experiences, and you rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, it turns out there's a huge relationship between the positivity of the employees in their experiences in working for that dot, and the experiences of the clients or customers of that dot, and the profitability of the dot. Experiences are huge, which when you take that away, you get it's a simple logic flow, isn't it? Our experiences drive our behaviors, which drive our outcomes. Experiences are huge because they drive behaviors, they drive outcomes. If you have a really good experience at the gym, let's say, you're more likely to go back to the gym and get the outcomes that come from going back to the gym. If you've got a fantastic experience like I've had with some of the realtors that I've had over the years, then that experience leads to my behaviors in terms of either coming back and doing business again or advocating to friends and family to work with this person, and then the outcomes flow from that. same's true for you if you've ever had a good experience in working on a team. If you really felt good at work, not every moment of it, but if it felt good, your behaviors were different, your outcomes were different. So on some simple level, we all know this. Experiences drive behaviors, drive outcomes. So to create and scale extreme positive outcomes, we've got to design extremely positive experiences. It's not, in a sense, it's not rocket science, right? Which means, for us today, we have an opportunity. Because if you put all experiences on a continuum today, and of course on the far left you've got exploitative experiences where I guess there's some bad actors out there who exploit their clients or their employees. We don't want that. We want the stuff over on the far right. As clients of yours, as employees on a team, we want extreme positive experiences. Absolutely we do. But where do we live? Where does the data suggest we live today? The data suggests we live right here. We live in a transactional world, folks. If you're an employee of a big company, you're not known as an employee or even a team member. You're called a full-time equivalent, FTE. Or you're called headcount. Can I get more headcount? Or if it's a bit tight, you're like, can I have half a head? Can I have half a head? Give me half a head. Half a head count. If you're a customer, you're not an actual human that happens to be doing business with, you're like your average basket size. Or your lifetime customer value. If you're a patient in a hospital, you're not a whole human. You're your symptom or your insurance code for that symptom. You're the gallbladder in room 202. For those of you who've ever been to a hospital, you'll know that. You don't feel like a whole human. You're just a number in a room. Your kids, if you've got kids in school, they're not a whole human. They're their GPA. From about 10 onwards, they're their GPA. We have taken whole humans as clients, as associates, as patients, as students, and we've diminished them into elements of a financial transaction. Okay, let's just put that slide back up for a second, if you would, because we don't have to live there. We do live there. We are getting used to living there. We are beginning to accept that we're just elements of a financial transaction, and this is true in school all the way to retirement. We're sort of getting used, but you get more of what you accept. And today what I want to hold out for you is we should deem this not acceptable. This is not okay. It's what helps drive our stress, our anxiety, our physical ill health. We're living in a transactional world. It means for you, if you want to stand out, the competition is transactional. The competition for really good talent, the competition for clients. Most people don't treat people like people. They treat you like a number, and it's everywhere. I mean, it's kind of weird that all the human resources systems that we live within are actually just extensions of financial systems, which is what they are. So if you wanted to stand out, the bar's not that high because we live in a transactional world. If you could figure out what is an extremely positive experience for your customers, your clients, your team members, if you're a team leader, wow, it will be different. It will feel different. So what that means, of course, is there is huge benefit today in studying that outlier up there. Weirdly, this company, real company, didn't do that. When I was working with them, they went, look, that dot way up there in the top right, I mean, it's an outlier, isn't it? It's an exception. We've got way more dots down there in the 2 and the 3. There's way more dots down there, so what we should do is try to move the 2s to the 3s and the 3s to the 4s. We should try to move the below average to average and the average to above average. That's what we should do, because in aggregate, we're going to shift everybody a little bit to the right. We do this a lot, and we do it because we believe the world works like this. Experiences to outcomes. If you have a below average experience at time 1, and you try to move it like from a 2 to a 3, we assume you get the same amount of performance increase at time 2. And if you move a 3 to a 4, you get the same amount. So if you've got way more clients, or in this case stores, at the 2 or the 3, it just makes sense to move the 2 to the 3 and the 3 to the 4, 5. That's why we've put the 4s and the 5s together, and we call it top 2 box. Percent favorable. And we feel better about that because the number's higher. 76% favorable. The problem is, I promise you take 30 years of research into studying human experiences, the world doesn't work like that. It works like that. It's curvilinear. Sorry for those stat heads. It's curvilinear, it's not linear, which means if you move a 2 experience to a 3 or a 3 to a 4, it doesn't get you anything. It's only when you do something with a client that is so something, it's so meaningful, and I'll break down what it is, but when you do something with a client where they go 5, that's the only time you can predict that they're going to buy, or if they're going to go recommend you as somebody to work with to friends and family. It's only when you get something that goes 5 that you actually get a predictive outcome. So if you want a mindset mind move, I'll give you a couple of these. If you want a mindset mind move, a mindset isn't wrong per se, it just keeps you static. If you want to move to the next level, you got to move your mind first. And one of the first mind moves is, the mindset says 4s and 5s are basically the same, it's percent favorable. No, 4s are 3s, not 5s. 4s are 3s. If you want to differentiate yourself in this business as a team leader, a team member, a person who's serving your clients, I'm sorry, the bar's, if you want to drive behavior anyway, the bar's at 5, which means for us, you got to, how do you design 5 experiences? If you're a leader, if you're an associate, whatever organization you're in, how can we design 5 experiences? At least if we want to not just feel better about ourselves, but if we want to drive behavior, if we want to drive sales, if we want to drive productivity, if we want to drive growth, experiences drive behaviors, drive outcomes. If we want these outcomes, we got to get into this. And frankly, just from me to you, it's one of the least discovered skills of leadership or salesmanship is experience design. How do we design experiences that drive outcomes? Well, I tell you what, if you study, this is really what I've been doing for 30 years, I suppose, if you study team after team after team after team like that, you study those dots on the top right, across industries, in real estate, but also in pharmaceutical sales, in medical device sales, in hospitality, in financial services. If you study those on the top right, and if you, obviously they're all different in some way, but if you were to say, Marcus, just shut up and tell me what's the same. Is there anything common about those experiences top right other than just the experiences are jolly good? I would have to say, and I wish I didn't say this, but I have to, and I rejected this for 20 years. Like, shame on me. The answer kept showing up, and I kept going, yeah, not that. They don't mean that. So shame on me. But the answer is this. When you actually do focus groups or interviews where you're interviewing the people in the teams in the top right, the word you hear is love. Love. I love that team. I love my work. I love this. I love that activity. I love my clients. I love my brand. I love this guy. Love, 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 love. And as a psychometrician, what you're supposed to do is when you hear the word used in a real sentence, you're supposed to take that word, in this case, love, and put it in your measurement tools, like your questions or your surveys. I didn't do that. I took the word love and I went, well, people can't take that seriously. Let's change it to passion or joy. Or we'll change it to engagement, all of which are good, those are good words. But what we humans actually say in those 5 experiences is we go, I love that, I love that, I love that, I love that, I love that. It's true in 28 countries around the world. When Japanese say love, they mean love the same way as Argentinians do. When you look at the 5 experiences, we go, I love that, I love that, I love that. Which means love is an incredible predictive force. If you want to predict positive human behaviors like sales, like growth, like creativity, like collaboration, like advocacy, love is predictive. Love's a lot of things. And by the way, I don't mean love like kissing people in front of the Eiffel Tower, romantic love, although that's jolly good too. I just mean the kind of love that drives human behavior. When we go, I love that, that's when we can start to predict what you're going to do. Now look, as a repressed Brit, I wish it wasn't love. I wish it was something else. But people keep saying it. And at some point, you've just got to go, Marcus, seriously, the elephant is the elephant. We humans lean into love, and when we do, we behave differently. So in terms of like a metaphor for you, think about boiling water. You know, if you take water from 0 to 11, if you heat it up to 11, it's not boiling. You heat it up from 11 to 111, not boiling. 111 to 211, not boiling. The only time you can predict that water is going to change its state from a liquid to a vapor is 212. So when it comes to water, you got boiling and then not boiling. When it comes to measurement, you got 5, everything else just not 5. Not 5. When it comes to human emotions driving behavior, you got love, everything else, sorry, not love. Love, not love. I don't mean liking, really jolly like. That's all fine. But if someone says, I really jolly liked you, I can't predict what they're going to do. When it comes to prediction, can I predict that that client is going to stick with you or advocate for you or do anything productive? The only thing I can predict is when someone walks around with love in their heart for you. Sorry. But love, for us, it's the quintessence of the human experience, isn't it? You're born, it's the first thing you reach for, it's the last thing you cling onto before you die, and the entire rest of your life is like a scavenger hunt for love. And that's the world we're living in right now. We live in a transactional world where no one trusts anyone. The trust for realtors is less than 15%, the same as everything else. So if you manage to build a deeply trusting relationship with your clients where they walk around, we're going, I love her, I love him, I love her. It's massive because it's weird and it's different and it's hard. So you think about a mindset, mind move. Love is soft. It's soft. Love's soft. No. Love's the most powerful force in business. Which is weird because we don't have a strategy for it. We're here in Boston, go to Harvard Business School. See if you can find a course on love. There's a whole strategy on how to do things like cost effectively. There's a whole sort of strategy on how to do things efficiently. These days, there's a whole strategy on how to do things artificially intelligently. We don't have a strategy for doing things lovingly. What does it mean to do anything lovingly? Like, that's really interesting because it's the thing that drives all the most productive human behaviors. What does it mean to do anything lovingly? Is anyone teaching that anywhere in any real estate course, in any leadership course? Other than we take it euphemistically and start talking about satisfaction or loyalty. But it's really like, how do you get someone to walk around with love in their heart for you? How do you do that? In a world which doesn't trust anyone, how do you do that? Well, the first thing we've got to do, right, if we really want to think about designing love in, I would suggest to you over the last 15, 20 years, we've designed love out. We've designed love out of classrooms. We've designed love out of hospitals. We've designed love out of real estate transactions. We've designed love out of teams at work. I think we've designed it out. For those of you that have ever worked with HR, we've designed it out of the human part of human resources. We've designed it out. So if you really want to win, you've got to figure out how to design it in. If you want to know what I'm doing for the next 10 years of my career, I'm just trying to figure out how we can educate every single super smart person graduating from college so that they only join teams or companies that have tried, they won't be successful every time, but they've tried to design love in. I want to educate millions of future leaders that love matters, and I don't want to live in a loveless world. I have 2 kids. I do not want them to grow up. Well, they're 21 and 23, so they're already sort of there. Bye-bye. I'm done. Parenting is over. But I don't want them to live in a loveless world where we're becoming increasingly disfluent about what love even means. We can't even say it. I shared some of this data with the 30 biggest human resources CHR, Chief Human Resources Officers in New York about 3 months ago. They couldn't even say the word. It took 2 hours for them to be able to say the word love. We can't even, it's the most powerful force in business. We can't even say it. So how do you weave it into your life? How do you design it in? First of all, by the way, let's have a definition. What do we mean by love? The Greeks had 8 definitions of the word love. Some of you might have read Gary Chapman's book, 5 Love Languages. Jolly good book. But there aren't 5. Sorry, Gary, there aren't. There's 8 billion. There's 8 billion love languages, right? What you mean by love is a wee bit different than what I mean by love. Okay, that's fine. And yet, wherever you go in the world, when somebody says, I love that, I can predict what they're going to do next. So there's something common about this definition. When we attach the word love to a realtor or a transaction or a team, that's weird. But we all mean something similar around the world because it drives our behavior. Boiling, not boiling. That's the same around the world. So here's a definition I would offer you. I'm not suggesting this is perfectly your definition, but if you were to say to me, Marcus, take all those teams in the top right, and when they say love, what did they mean? I would suggest they meant this. When we attach the word love to our realtor, let's say, it's because that person seemed to have a deep and unwavering commitment to my flourishing. I wasn't just a transaction. I wasn't just a means to an end. I was like a whole human, and she or he wanted me to this. If I were to ask you, give me 10 pieces of music that you like, you might give me 10. You might talk about which bits of it you like. But if I said, come on, give me something you love, what song do you love? There's very few. And the ones that somehow land with you with love, it's because they touched you in some small way. You were just a little bigger. The song just made you do that. If I said, tell me about a movie you loved, it would be because some part of that story, or some scene even, maybe it was just a character, it just touched you in some way and did this to you a little bit. So even trivial things like movies, when we say, I love it, it's not just a this. It's a red heart, and it means something about human flux. So if I said, tell me about a boss that you've had that you really respected, you might list a whole bunch. But if I said, come on, did you ever work with someone you loved working for them on that team? Tell me any manager you loved. It's a very short list, isn't it? And it's because on some level, that leader made you feel that your flourishing was the point. They made you feel like you were the point of it. That it wasn't like getting work done through people, it was getting people done through work. That's a weird trick. But it's beautiful whenever you work with someone like that. And it's not soft, is it? Some of the toughest conversations you've ever had with any other human being is with somebody who loved you. Come in, sit down. You're fired. I love you. I'm actually firing you because this is the wrong job. I put you in this job. It's the wrong job, man. And it's my fault. You know, people are complicated. I thought you could do it. I thought it was the right job, but it isn't. And I love you. I really do. But if I left you in it, that's not loving. That's just cowardly. Tough love is love. That's why it's tough love. Tough is just brutality. So this doesn't mean soft. It means you've got this, you know you do. You've got a feeling inside of you that's like, I've got one life. I've got one life. I've got something inside me, and I want to live a first-rate version of my life, not some second-rate version of somebody else's. And you've got that in you right here. So whenever you bump into anything that gives you a chance to let out what's in, you attach the word love to it. Humans attach the word love to it. We love anything that gets us to do this. And we're not seen anymore as just a transaction. Which means, of course, that I hope you can see that. Caring is lovely. Caring is great, but it's a subset of love. Caring, if you're a caring realtor, okay. A caring realtor is somebody who, I don't know, sends me a birthday card on my birthday and remembers that, or has a system to remember that, whatever. That's nice. But loving is proactive. Loving is a particular realtor who might have actually advocated me to not do something that was following me down a path that wasn't actually right for me. Love is having a tough conversation with a client about this or that decision, and then the client, after a while, going, wow, that was so great that I heard that from you. A caring manager is someone who helps you, I don't know, clean up at the end of a long day. But love is the manager who goes, oh, I'm going to move the teams around a wee bit so that you can play to your strengths just a little bit more. They don't have to do that. Love is proactive. Caring, jolly good, just reactive. So that's the first thing we need to get right. We want to design love, then we got to get right. What's the definition of love? It is a commitment to the flourishing of a human. When we feel that, we go, love. The second thing we got to get straight is that balance, if you want to design love in, ditch balance for a minute. By the way, what a strange aspiration that is. Find work-life balance. Really? How'd you do that? Because there's a tiny little spot, isn't it, where it's all balanced. Because so it's really hard to find. And by the way, if you ever found that moment where it was all balanced, where it was like, oh, it's Saturday morning, mom's happy, I don't know, kids are happy, job's pretty good, boss is good, finance is good, community's good. If you ever got that moment, you know what would be going through your mind? Nobody move. I got it. Don't move, nobody. Granny, stop it. Stay right there, Granny. So, balance is stasis. Health is motion. Health is motion. So if we think about, am I clicking the wrong button? I probably am. There we go. Health is motion. Yeah, balance is it's a mindset. Balance is healthy. Okay, it's not wrong entirely. But if you want to move to the next level, you've got to think that movement is health. How do you move through your day? If you think about the most successful person you know, they're not balanced. They're moving. They move through the different domains of their life as a mother, as a father, as a friend, in their faith, in their community, in their business, in their company. They move through these different domains of their life, and they somehow seem to draw the psychological energy they need to keep moving. It's sort of the opposite of burnout. The motion, I mean, that's what health is in nature. It's anything that moves through its environment and gets the nourishment it needs to keep moving. Health is motion. How are you moving? Who's ever taught you to move? If motion is everything, what are the two most important roles you play in your life? These two. No one tells you how to do this. On the left is mover. How do you move through your life and get the nourishment, the power, the energy you need to keep growing and moving? How do you do that? Who teaches you how to do that at 10, 11, 12? No one. And then the other role is maker. You're making experiences for other people. You're a mover, you're a maker. You're a mover, you're a maker. You move through life and get the energy you need to keep growing in your own life, and then you're making experiences for clients or for colleagues. Walking into an elevator, that's an experience. You may either make it a little better or a little worse, but you never leave it at zero. How do you move? I want to spend a little bit of time, if we can, just on these two roles. And I know these are big roles. These are, you might go, well, parenting is the most important role I play, or leading is no, those are sub-roles. These are the two most important roles you play in your entire life. If you don't know how to move through your own life, you will wither. If you don't know how to make experiences for others, you will never get them to do what you want them to do. You will have no influence in your life. And they mesh, of course. If you're all mover, no maker, you're a narcissist. But if you're all maker, no mover, you're burned out. So they got to kind of live together. Here's a couple of thoughts on both of them, if that's all right. Here's the first. If you study the most successful people, I just go back here, look at mover. You think about the most successful people in any job, they don't find a job they love. If anyone ever says, hey, look, find a job you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life again. Run, run, run away when someone says that. Because when you study really successful people, they do not find a job they love. They do not love all that they do. There is no data that says the most effective people love all that they do. They do not find a job they love. They find the love in what they do, though. That's different and doable, and all the best people do that. Find the love in what you do. I started off studying excellence in every job. Whenever you're looking at excellence in any job, they'll always at some point start telling you what they love about what they do. The first role I studied, weirdly, was housekeepers in hotels in Disney. And the first thing you do is a focus group. So we did the 8 best housekeepers at Walt Disney World. And they didn't know each other. They were all really good at the same job. And halfway through the focus group, I'm just asking open-ended questions like you would. Halfway through, one of them says, you know what I love about what I do? I love, and I'm scribbling. What? I love making lines on the carpet. I got to clean 34 rooms, and every room is a chance to make lines on the carpet. So I'm scribbling, going, loves lines on the carpet. And I'm looking around like, oh, everyone, you're all disciplined, are you? You're all like that, are you? And they're looking at me and looking at her going, I don't know what she's saying. So I'm like, well, what's the last thing you do? One of them says, well, the last thing I do is I lie on the bed and turn on the ceiling fan. I'm like, what? Lie on the bed and turn on the ceiling fan? But there's Disney standard operating procedures that says thou shalt not lie on the bed. I don't understand. Why would you lie on? Well, because that's the first day, that thing that a guest does after a long day out in the theme parks. You come back in, you flop down the bed and turn on the fan. Dust comes off the top of the fan. The guests might think the rest of the room is as dirty as the top of the fan. So if I want to know if the bathroom's clean, I'll sit on the toilet or I'll lie in the bathtub, because that's how the guest sees the room. I love seeing a room through the guest's eyes. I'm like, oh, do you all do, and someone else said, I don't know what she's talking about. What I do is I make a show. I make a show for my guests. And again, I'm looking at the Disney rules. It says backstage and on stage. It's like, you're backstage. What, show? What are you, juggling? What? And you probably know what she said. She was like, well, I take the fluffy toys the kids leave on the bed and I'll arrange them in a scene. Right? You've probably had that. So one day it's like Mickey's arms on a remote control, Minnie's arms on an empty French fry container, so the kids think all day long Mickey and Minnie just hung out in the bed and snacking and watching TV. And the next day it's Donald and Goofy dancing on the... I make a show. Everything's a show. So the big discovery when you study really, really excellent people in any job is, number one, they find a love in it, and number two, the love's really different. Remember this, average is homogeneous. Excellence in anything is idiosyncratic. Excellence in your business is weird. You're weird. Beautifully weird, but weird. Excellence is weird. Find the love in what you do. Why that's so important is because most of us are terrible at it. I know that because I've asked this question probably 250,000 times, because it was in every single one of Gallup's pre-employment selection instruments. The question was this: what do you love about what you do? So imagine, you ask that question, 250,000 people answer it. What do you think is by far the most common answer to that question? Just think for a second. What do you love about what you do? In any job, it's the most common, by the way, weirdly. By far the most common answer is, I love working with people. I love people. I love working with people. Almost like I was also a person. I'm connected to people. I don't know. It's weird. Now, there's nothing wrong with that answer, but boy, is it vague. Which people? What are you doing with the people? Are you selling to the people or organizing the people, inspiring the people, saving the people? Give me a verb. What are you doing with 2 or 4? The people. It's a vague... By the time you get to be 12, when you're 9, you're really close to what you love. You ask a 9-year-old, for those of you who got 9-year-olds, ask a 9-year-old, when was the last time an afternoon flew by? At 9, you're really close to what you love, and their answers are so vivid. Even if they say video games, which a few do, they don't say video games. They'll say this video game with these friends at this level with these weapons. It's so, when you're 9, you're close to what you love, and then you get to be 10, and the whole education system changes, and you get adulterated, which seems to mean an increasing distance between you and what you love. So that by the time I get you, at 9, you've got this rich, fluent language. Your love language is really fluent. You're really close to it because it's meaningful. It ties to things that you do in a day. By the time you get to be 29, you're disfluent. You've gone from a rich language to, I like working with people. It's like rich language to see-spot run. Growing up seems to mean increasingly disfluent in what you love. So most of us, yeah, find the love in what you do. Most of us couldn't get as detailed as I love lying on the bed and turning on the ceiling fan. So I want to help you a little bit to get back to when you were 9, because its success it so depends on this. Imagine that the day today isn't 24 hours. We think of our day as the enemy, kind of like we have to, you know, the to-do list rolls over from yesterday, and then we have to get through the day. That's the language we use, right? So you keep the day at bay. Most successful people don't do that. They'll see their day. Yes, there's a to-do list, and we have to do it. But the day is our smartest, wisest friend. Every day, the day is basically showing you thousands upon thousands of interactions, situations, moments. They're like threads in the fabric of your day. They're threads in the fabric of your work. And some of the threads you're pretty emotionally neutral about. They're black, they're white, they're gray, they're green, whatever. You just got to do them. But some of the threads are red. A red thread is any situation or any activity or any action or any moment that you love. What are your red threads? Start a sentence with, I love it when, and then try to finish the sentence without being vague. I love it when what? I love it when I lie on the bed turning on the ceiling fan. I love it when I make a show for my guest. What's your version of that? What's your version of what are your red threads? Because the Mayo Clinic research studying doctors and nurses that didn't burn up, the Mayo Clinic research, because there's a whole bunch of nurses that do burn up, but they studied doctors and nurses that didn't, and they found a few things, but one of the things they found is that 20% of the activities in the job were red threads. Not 100, not 80, 20. How much of your job should you love? 20%. How many red threads should I have in it? 20%. And it's a threshold. You get above 20%, all sorts of good things happen in terms of your productivity and your resilience. But if you're at 40%, you're not twice as resilient. If you're at 60%, you're not 3 times as resilient. You get above 20, and you're a powerful human. Now, the tricky thing for you, of course, is that other people are colorblind to your red threads. That's a problem. Even your mum, your dad, they don't know what your red threads are. And looking at you, your race, your gender, your age, it tells me nothing about what your red threads are. You've got more synaptic connections in your brain than there are stars and planets in 5,000 Milky Ways, and that's not hyperbole. That's how crazily unique you are. So the only person that could tell, I looked at those housekeepers, I would have no idea that one of them said, I like making lines in the carpet. And the other one said, I love sitting on the toilet and lying in the tub. Like, same with you. You're in the same profession, but you're so different. What are your red threads? If you don't figure them out, no one else can. It's not that no one else will, it's that no one else can. What are the particular activities? There are clues. Let me give you 3 clues. And then if you like, the simplest thing to do is take a pad like this around for 1 week. Again, if you don't do it, no one will. But take it around it for a week and look for these 3 clues to a red thread. There are more than 3, but here's 3 good ones. Before you do it, you find yourself looking forward to it. That's not everything, is it? There are some activities you keep procrastinating. You try to shove it off to the side of your desk, hand it off to the new person because it'll be developmental for them. But there's others where it's positive anticipation. That's a good clue. Here's a second clue. While you're doing it, time speeds up. That's not the same for all of you. But there are some activities where you've been doing it for, well, it feels like you've been doing it for 5 minutes, an hour's gone by. That's weird, because you're not all the same. If you've got more than one kid, you'll know this. You'll see this, where one kid's just in the zone and the other kid is kind of got ADD for that activity. It's one of the interesting things about dealing with kids with ADD is that it's not generic ADD. You find a particular activity and boom, it's like you found a red thread. What are your activities where time flies by? Third clue, when you're done with it, you kind of almost want to do it again. Some activities, you're done with it and you're like, oh my goodness, that's over. You're like an empty husk. But there's other activities where weirdly, the doing of it makes you this. No one ever tells you this in psychology, but activities themselves have got energy in them. The annoying thing is there's different energy for different people. So just take a blank pad around with you. Please try this, because it's free. And it's just simply trying to help you figure out where's your sources of power. By the way, when you do this, just take it around with you for a week. We're not doing it because of love and love. We're doing it because when you are doing an activity that's a red thread of yours, we rate you as more attractive. We rate you as more persuasive. We rate you as more confident. When you're doing, we don't expect you to be perfect. We expect you to be authentic. Well, that means we expect you to figure out what your red threads are and then weave them into work. When you're doing an activity that you love, your brain chemistry changes. You have elevated levels of norepinephrine, serotonin, oxytocin, anandamide, and they think what's happening is that the fight or flight sort of focused part of your brain is changed by that cocktail so that now you let in more information. You're more collaborative, you're more creative, you're more passionate, you let more stuff in, and we buy more from you because you're more attractive when you're doing an activity that's a red thread. Please figure out your red threads because you're prettier. That sounded wrong. You know what I mean? You're more compelling. Why? Because you're fluid, you're in flow, you're confidence-inducing. When you try to be all things to all people, or you mistake your red threads for another color, you come across as Franken agent. It's like, I don't know which part of your body's going to fall off, but it's going to happen. I don't want to be around when it does. Love and work. We're not talking about love because, well, look, I mean, if you want to take a moral point of view, love's a jolly good thing. But it also happens to be a precursor to contribution. You want to be at your best? Take love seriously. And if you don't, no one will. But it's there for you. Try that love it, loathe it for a week. Okay, that's Mover. We could spend a ton of time on that because it's, gosh, we just do such a poor job of helping people really tap into and contribute that which they love. Very few of us get to the specificity that those housekeepers did. But you must. Well, you must. I hope you do. Maker. Okay, this is cool. I hope you never unsee this. Now, we could spend literally months on this in terms of how do you make experiences that people love. That's kind of interesting. How do you make experiences that people love? Because you're all experience makers. No, that's not what it says on my business. Okay, fine. But you're an experience maker. I'm going to bond with you, sell with you, grow with you, advocate others to come if you've created an experience for me. Why? Because experiences drive behaviors, drive outcomes. You're an experience maker. I've ridden up on elevators. I'm staying at the hotel over there. What's it called? The Omni. I've been in elevators with half of you, some of you. And it's a different experience. Some of you get in elevators and I walk out and I'm like, that was, I don't know, like I'm up a little bit. And other experiences, you walk out like this somehow. Like an elevator is an experience. You're making experiences all the time. So the question for us on some level, yeah, look, you could spend a week and go, what are the 5 experiences that I'm creating this week? What happened? What was there? Who was I with? Like, this is different than the love it, loathe it. Just go spend a week and think about what are the 5 experiences that either I'm experiencing or that I'm making. And then try to understand. You're a researcher. All of us who are really good at our jobs, we're researchers. We're trying to figure out what works and repeat it. So that's not a bad way to spend some time. But I'll tell you this. If you think about health is motion, if I were to first start working with you, I'm a client, potential client. And I know there's so much that's changing in your industry, and gosh, I know that. But there is quite a lot you can control nonetheless. Because when I first start working with you, I'm that little person way over there on the left. Hello. I don't know what experience I'm going to get with you, but I'm hoping that by the time I end up with it, I'm over here going, I loved that. I'm hoping, like, right, I want to walk around. I do want to walk around with love in my heart for you, but I'm starting over here and I'm ending over there. And the question for all of us as experience makers is, how do I get there? How do you move me there? Is love just a magical mystery tour? You just wave a magic wand and I love you. I mean, there's obviously something magical about love, yes. But when it turns out you can revert, this is going to sound weird, you can reverse engineer love. If you spend 30 years and you reverse engineer people on the far right and you go, how did you get there? You find 5 feelings. We really could spend a ton of time diving into each one. I'm just going to share with you these 5. And if you try to design love into your practice, into your clientele, it needs to follow this sequence, because it's a sequence. You can't start with the one at the end. You got to start with the one at the beginning and then get us to lean in. The first feeling as we move through from left to right is power. If I'm going to move with you, I've got to have a sense of, not power over you. I don't want power over you. I want power over my own decisions to come work with you. I want power over my own actions. When we studied patients of doctors, and those patients were advocating their doctor to everyone they could, and we tried to look at all the different parts and pieces of the experience, the 2 most powerful questions that predicted if you would advocate your doctor was this. Number 1, my doctor explained my condition to me in words I could understand. And number 2, they gave me something at home I could do to alleviate my condition. That's power. That's doctors giving me power. So many times, if you think about what we sometimes do in our business, is we don't think about how clear are we being to a person about what world they're joining. We need to be really clear about what is the world that you're joining when you come work with me as your partner. The best companies in the world have very clear promises in terms of the world you're joining. Chick-fil-A, like, we're closed on Sunday. Hey, if you don't like that, don't come here on Sunday then. But we're super clear about who we are. And you get to choose, do I want to go get a chicken sandwich there or not? Be vivid about who you are. Be vivid about what I can do in the world that you're giving me. So much of us as clients of yours, we're idiots. We don't know what to do. And if you're not careful, you're going to show us a map in a mall, but there's no "you are here" arrow. That's really disempowering. First thing you got to do for me, give me power. Help me know how the world works. Otherwise, it's not neutral. I go down and away. Every one of these feelings, if you don't hit it right, I go down and away. So the first feeling, how do I work this world? Second feeling, harmony. Every single human experience is first and foremost an emotional experience. You know this. We don't buy homes unless we've got an emotional connection. We need to feel a sense that you know what our emotion is coming into this. Some nurses give painless injections, which is weird. You ask people, rate the pain on a scale of 1 to 10. Some nurses have statistically significant, way lower pain ratings. I went and studied them to see, well, what is it? What's the trick? Different needle, swab, what is it? Turns out nothing to do with the needle. But all of the nurses who gave painless injections all said the same thing right before they plunged the needle in. They all said some version of, this is going to hurt a little bit. I'll try and make it hurt as little as I can. Just by saying the thing that the patient was feeling, they halved the pain. If you want somebody to move in towards you with love, make sure you're saying to them that you know what they're feeling right now. Are you communicating super clearly that you know what they're feeling? When you get that wrong, it's jarring. I wouldn't tell you to go to a Coldplay concert. Not because I don't like Coldplay, love Chris and the Friends, they're good. Went to a Coldplay concert the other day, and it was really carefully choreographed in terms of the make, trade, fair products that were there. During the concert, they had lights, they had flags, they had some balloons. Halfway through, he's like, everyone turn their phone off. He's going to do 3 songs just listening. The lights on the little band lit up. And it was like this wonderful, emotional, harmonious thing. And you're like, I think I could love everybody for a week now. Like that's, and then we got out into the parking lot and we fought for 2.5 hours. We took more time to get out of the parking lot than to watch the concert. It was such a jarring experience because, you know, Chris had gone, okay, parking, whatever. But it's not. It's like every experience has a before, during, and an after. The after experience, you know this, some of you, the last feeling lasts longest. You want to get people to advocate for you, to spread the good word about you? What's the last feeling you leave them with? Well, Chris, you left me with, I went from harmonious and warmth to fighting with everybody to see whether or not I could get in the right line. Okay, super jarring. Why? Because, no knock on you, Chris, but you'd outsourced the parking. You hadn't thought about it. You've lost me. Next feeling, significance. Do you see me? If you want me to be drawn into you as a realtor, do you know my story? Do you know my backstory? Do you know my front story? Do you know my today's story? Do you know anything about what I'm going through right now? Do you see me? We live in a world where we're not seen very much at all. And you can see it all over the place. One of them is spans of control. I don't know whether you've thought about this much, but we've got a lot of doctors and nurses that are sort of burning out because the average span of control in this country in a hospital is 1 to 60. One nurse supervisor to 60 nurses. Well, each one of those individual nurses has their own story that they're bringing every day. If you've got a nurse supervisor to 60 people, and you wonder why you can't find nurses anymore, you wonder why those nurses are burning up, it's because every one of those individuals feels totally unseen and insignificant. For those of you who want to be better at leading people, some of you in this room are leaders. The simplest thing you should do to make people feel significant, the simplest thing you should do to be a loving leader, like what's the secret to get the best out of people on your team? Check in with each person for 15 minutes every week. Ask them 2 questions. How do you feel about last week? What are you working on this week? Do it one by one. Don't do it as a team. Do it one by one. Make sure that person, 15 minutes. It could be over the phone, could be with text, could be in person. The modality doesn't seem to matter. But ask me every single week, how do you feel about last week? What are you working on this week? 52 times a year. If listening to that you're going, well, that just sounds boring, then that's so fine if that feels boring to you. Just don't lead people. Because leading isn't some special thing. Leading is like helping a person every single week figure out, what do you love about what you're doing? What are you working on this week? Love and work. Love and work. If you work for someone, that is a legitimate expectation. A week is, 52 weeks in a year, 52 little baby sprints, right? That's what we need as humans, is we need a simple way to touch base with someone one-on-one. What did you feel last week? What are you working on this? Next feeling, the warmth of others. Any human being experiences something in isolation, we hate that. You want to kill us? Make us lonely. We don't just want others, we want the warmth of others. Who am I going through this experience with? I look around instinctively, every human does this. We look around and go, who am I going through this with? And the first person we look for, by the way, is a guide. I want a guide. Who's my guide? Are you my guide? Have you set yourself up as my guide? Because one of the things that we do that's unloving is we hand people off. Handoffs, from now on, please see this way, all handoffs are unloving. Occasionally we have to do them, but we better call them what they are. They're unloving. The person that you get seated by in a restaurant isn't the person you made the restaurant reservation with. They're not the same as the host who meets you when you're there. When you sit down with that person, they aren't the person who actually brings you your food. They're not the person who actually brings you you get handed off in a restaurant, one to another, to another, to another. And it's stressful for you because it means you're the person who has to carry your order through all the way through that process. Woe betide if 2 of you change seats and the wrong person gets the right. Every handoff means that you are now alone in this, which in a restaurant isn't so bad. But if I'm buying a house and you hand me off from one person to another, please know that every time you do that, it's stressful. Because I've got to hold my story all by itself. It's like going into a hospital, and the person who checks you in isn't the person who puts you in the room, who isn't the doctor who comes and treats you, who's different than the nurse who comes and helps you, who's different than the next nurse, and you're the patient who somehow has to keep your story. Just like calling up your insurance agent, or you'll find out your bank. You ever been handed off? Every handoff hurts. If you've got one in your company, that's okay. Just make sure you've mitigated it in some way. Somebody's like, oh, hospitals on the brain, but many good hospitals have created a role called the hospitalist, who's a doctor, and their entire job is explaining you to all the other healthcare providers who come help you. It's called a hospitalist. What's that role in your business? Who's my guide? Because if you love me, you won't hand me off and force me to tell my story again, and worry that I might actually miss out some really important details. Don't stress me out like that. Why? Because it's unloving. Last one, growth. Do something that makes me feel a little bigger. What can you do to make me feel just a little bit bigger? The two associations in the world with the strongest alumni associations are what? Strongest alumni associations, colleges and the armed forces. Both institutions that are explicitly trying, I'm not saying they always succeed, trying to make you bigger. And they stay super connected with you and you feel bonded to them because there's a huge link between learning and loyalty. Learning, loyalty, and love. So how are you helping anybody that comes to work with you to be a little more capable? Love is a forward-facing emotion. If you love me, you don't. If you got kids, you don't go, yeah, tomorrow, I hope you're okay. You don't do that. You go, I know you're going to have to get out there tomorrow and face the world again. I'm going to give you something. It could be a little trick. It could be a little technique. It could be inspiration. It could be whatever it is. I'm your realtor. I'm your partner. I'm going to help you move forward into the world wiser or smarter or just a little bit bigger. Now, you can't start there, because if you haven't given me power, harmony, significance, warmth of others, I don't trust you anymore. So you can't start far right. You got to start on the left and move me toward love in my heart for you. What this is, folks, is that's a methodology. You can design that in, and the smartest of you in this room will figure out how to do it. And it won't all be the same. You'll all do it a wee bit differently, but I promise you, if you want to summarize what human beings need to feel sequentially to walk around going, I love her, I love him, these are the 5 feelings that will get you there. So that's mover, that's maker. Gosh, there's so much more we could dive into. If any of you want to learn more about what I'm going to be doing for the next 10 years, go to Design Love In, because we've got so much more to do. Some of it's in business, some of it's in education. I don't know about you, I am not going to stand for an increasingly loveless world. It is not okay. We have got to be more connected to ourselves as humans and to other humans. And the connection method that we've come up with over 1 billion years is love. So let's figure out how to take it seriously. Morally, it's the right thing to do. It also happens to be the most powerful force in business. You go home and be a smart business person, but I don't understand about love. Well, then you're not a smart business person. Let's get into the business of being really honorably and authentically connected to our fellow humans. All good things happen then. I'll just end with this lovely line. This is Pablo Neruda, who's probably the best love poet in the last 100 years. He said, love is born in savoring. If you want to find your red threads, savor a week. Do that love it, loathe it for a week. Savor it. It lives in intelligence, which means just because you found a red thread doesn't mean you could turn it into sales or work or productivity. You got to figure it out. Just because you thought about what you might do for significance or harmony doesn't mean you figured out perfectly. You got to iterate. You got to be intelligent. But love doesn't die from being killed. Love dies from neglect. And we're living in a world where increasingly we have forgotten about love. We dismiss it, we flatten it, we turn it into cliche. And as a result, we live in an increasingly loveless world. So I'm going to leave you with this. Look, I want you to believe in yourself. I want you to believe in your clients. I want you to believe in the possibility of the future. But through all of that, what I want, and I think all of us who care about you, what we really want for you and from you, is we want you to believe in love. I hope today I've given you some data and some practical ideas about how to design love in to the life of yourself and those you serve and those you lead. Thank you very much.